So today the teaching will be, as I said yesterday, with praise to the Buddha for teaching dependent origination. The text that we went through yesterday drops for nurturing beings. Because any sentient being wishes for happiness, and in order to achieve, everyone has the right to achieve happiness. So everyone has the right to live a happy life. And as humans, we should use our the purpose of having this human intelligence is to solve problems in life and to achieve happiness. But then this intelligence that we have as humans sometimes gives lots of hopes and fears within us. Because of our hopes and fears, people are unhappy. So people, because of this, people have the more number of suffering. The animals don't have that much. The animals are satisfied when they get their food, and then this once they are satisfied with the food, then they just live idly. And then when there's no danger to their life. But humans, because of our hopes and fears, we tend to create lots of problems to ourselves. So nurturing beings in the title doesn't mean only nurturing the body, but the mind as well. So healing or nurturing the mind means having a very peaceful mind, happy mind. So what you have to know here is what causes us unhappiness, and then try to find the means by which you can achieve happiness. So when you take a medicine, for example, you have to first know what you are suffering from, the disease or the sickness. So without knowing that disease, just taking the medicine, or when you are sick, without taking medicine and hoping to be cured, then this will not happen. So when you are unhappy, you have to find the causes and the conditions which give rise to those states of mind, and then you try to reduce those causes and reduce the unhappiness. And so the less your unhappiness, you are unhappy, the happier you will be. So it's not necessary that you have to have a blissful experience as such, but you can also have a neutral sort of experience whereby you are also very peaceful, calm. So when you are happy, you have peace of mind, and if you live your life in this way, your life will be meaningful, and this is the meaning of the purpose of the healing or nurturing. So recently, when I was going from India to England, so perhaps it was in that plane from India to England, there was a passenger on the plane, a lady, and she showed me a picture of her son and a daughter. And she told me that this boy, her son, was very unhappy, helpless. She said the boy was helpless, feeling helpless and without any friends. So she asked me to pray for him. I told her it's not going to help merely by praying for him. So the reason why he feels lonely and helpless is he should have self-confidence. So when you lose your self-confidence, then you feel helpless. You have no way to turn, nobody to turn to. And put your hope in. So you should have self-confidence. You should have self-confidence, I thought. So what the main reason for that, the main method for having self-confidence is to be honest, not to be critical, not to be hypocritical, doing something in front and saying something in front and doing something else at the back of others. So you have to be very honest, truthful, and just. And then you will be self-confident. So if you are rather hypocritical, then you would somehow be concerned and worried. So the self-confidence is the means by which you should develop. The honesty is the means to develop self-confidence. So we have to base our behavior and attitudes on secular ethics. So, which is to say to have warm-heartedness. So whenever I tell people, the practice of Buddhism is ideally you should help others. Even if you cannot help others, you should at least not harm them. So if you have a warm heart, an altruistic attitude, even though there may be some things or people which may cause us fear or suspicion and so forth, these happen in relation to others. So if you have warm-heartedness, altruism, and feeling of closeness with them, then there is no reason why you should feel suspicious about them and fear them. So honesty, you should have pride within yourself and confidence. So if you're honest, you will have confidence, self-confidence. So the root of this is to think of helping others. Of course, it will not happen automatically to us, but you have to put effort and direct your mind towards that, because we have this intelligence, and therefore you have to see what is the advantage of being altruistic and what is the disadvantage of being selfish. And so this is not something that the animals have. Shantideva says all happiness in the world comes from helping others, thinking of helping others, wishing to help others, and all suffering comes because of selfish motive. And therefore, warm-heartedness, to think of benefiting others, you have to have the confidence that this is the source of our happiness. So when you harm others, it is actually with selfish motive that you want some happiness or something good. But if you think carefully, if you you'll know that if you harm others, you'll have the negative consequences. You'll suffer them. Then you will have more enemies. Then you would have to suspect them. So whatever others do to you, from your side, if you think of helping others, then you will not regret. And without any regret, then you will have confidence within yourself, to yourself. So you can be transparent, you can be honest. So in the authoritarian societies like China, totalitarian system like China, and they always tell a lie wherever they go. At all times they tell a lie. Many years ago, in the early years, I met some Chinese students in Delhi, and they told me that these days in China, we can't actually express what we want to say. So we have to suspect everybody. And then I have a friend, a Taiwanese, friend. I asked him. So there may be tourists, there are tourists from the mainland China coming to Taiwan, and also business people coming to Taiwan. And so what do they feel? What is their impression of Taiwan? And the friend told me that these people from the mainland China, when they have spent some time in Taiwan, they tell me that they don't have to fear anybody in this country. And so this is really good. They feel very happy. And so they say that eventually they will move to Taiwan. So most of the people who have wealth in China are people who are in the Politburo members, like the leaders, and who have authority. So people who are poor cannot really become wealthy. So many of these rich people send their money to foreign countries. So what this shows is that China is not so stable for them in the future, in the long run. Therefore, they send their money outside. So it is very important in human society to have honesty, to be honest. So that corruption and also the bullying, the higher ones bullying with the people with authority and so forth, bullying the poorer ones is really sad. And so human happiness, the root of it, it's rooted in our mind, which is the peace of mind. And you should have no suspicion and fear. And the main cause for that is to have the wish to help others, benefit others. And when you have this, then you will not have to suspect anybody. So the meaning of drops for nurturing beings, the essence of the meaning in this text is this one. So it says in the text that you should develop knowledge and good qualities and develop the altruistic attitude. If you have this, then you will be happy in this life, and you will also be happy in this next lives. So you'll be happy, your friends, families, the society, communities will be happy. So if you have covetousness or malicious thoughts, then there will not be happiness within yourself or family or kins within a family. So if that happens, then the family will not be happy. So if you don't have trust with each other, even if you take the same food from the same kitchen and so forth and live in the same house, without trust, there's no happiness. I have friends who say who are very wealthy, but then within their family, they don't have happiness. So it's important to have honesty, transparency, and truthful. Then you'll be happy. Individually, you'll be happy, and then there'll be happiness in the family and society. So this is not only me who's talking about it, but today in the world, there are many scientists and brain scientists, neuroscientists, and psychologists and so forth. They are talking about a moral crisis, the lack of moral ethics in society, and that's creating moral crisis. So if you have to find the means to resolve this problem based on religion, then it becomes rather narrow approach. So we are talking about a universal problem in the whole world. So you cannot solve this problem with just by basing yourself on some religion. So therefore, there is no other way but secular ethics. And so when you talk about secular ethics, you don't have to preach people like you preach religion. So in the nurturing drops for nurturing beings, it says you have to develop knowledge, and therefore you have to do something in the education system. So we talk a lot about hygiene, physical hygiene, and how to keep healthy physically. So there's no reason why we should not also teach about healthy minds. So just as we educate people about keeping a healthy body, likewise we can educate people about healthy mind. So we had recently this conference with scientists. With the topic of the conference was healthy body, healthy mind. So in order to have healthy body, you should have healthy mind. This is the theme. So when your mind is totally disturbed, then you will not have physical health as well. So there's strong. This makes a big difference. Healthy minds makes a big difference for healthy bodies. So we are not talking about reaching enlightenment, Buddhahood, but we are talking about how to live a good life. So from kindergarten, just as we have education from kindergarten to university level, we have to have a curriculum for finding peace of mind. So I've talked about this with many people, and there are people who are taking initiative in this. So for developing peace of mind, you cannot just say you have to meditate on or cultivate love and compassion. And so all the religions have been saying this for thousands of years. But the reason why we should develop love and compassion, this has to be introduced. The reason for developing this has to be taught to people. For Christians, of course, they have their creator God. So if you do that, like in order to serve the will of God, I mean, you have to practice love and compassion. That's not very universal. But there are many people who claim to be religious, but then in their day-to-day life, they are bullying others wherever they can, and they indulge in corruption and so forth. So what this shows is that you have not used reasoning to practice love and compassion, but just left it at some kind of superficial level, what is said in the religion. And I've said to some Indians that in their families, in their homes, they pray to Ganesh or Saraswati and Shiva, Brahma, and so forth. And so every morning they make offerings of flowers and lamb, and then sing praises. But then many of them who do these things in the morning at home indulge in corruption. They indulge in this practice of dishonesty. So I jokingly tell them that when you perhaps those who are indulging those who are corrupted, I tell them that maybe when you in the morning when you say your prayers, you may be praying to your God in order to have success in your corruption. So how can this happen? Because God that you believe in is the essence of God is love and compassion. So it's going to happen for the peace of mind cannot just happen by praying and doing some religious practice, but you have to use reasoning. So this is what the Nalanda tradition of Buddhism does. If you look at Shantideva's Bodhisattvacharya Avatara, of course, the the different treatises say that such and such things are said by the Buddha, but then they base on the explanations on their reasoning and logic. So when I go to Delhi or some other places in Delhi and meet Indian, so I have discussed about starting a curriculum for secular ethics to develop, to cultivate love and compassion. So first of all, you have to know, I tell them, the workings of the mind, the whole structure of the mind, like a map of mind. What kind of different states of mind there are, the primary mind, mental factors, and then the conceptual mind, and the sensory consciousness, and so forth. So these are actually found in our classical texts, so this is where we study about the science of mind. And we can also find these things in Brahmanavartika. So we have to have, first of all, have a map of mind, I usually tell them. So if we have to go from here to, from India to America, then we have to know the route. We have to have the map of the route. And then similarly, if you go on pilgrimage, you have to have a map that you can use to go to the different places, from one place to the next. So the goal is to have a society which is full of love and compassion, a loving and compassionate society. So in order to achieve that good, we have to know the means by which we can lead ourselves to that. Therefore, you have to have the map of mind. For academics, this becomes an academic study. So you have to have this map of mind. And then the various mental factors and the different emotions, conceptual thoughts, and sort of how they work. So for example, anger is brought about by unhappiness. And how to overcome that, you have to know. So we're not talking about some kind of what we should adopt and religious idea about what we should discard and what we should adopt. So these are taught in the Brahmanavartika. And so in Tibetan Buddhism, we talk about the various degrees of subtlety of mind. And then in the tantric text also, we have the states of mind at sleep, dream, waking state, and deep sleep, and so forth. So these can be used as subjects of research. So recently I was in Austria and meeting with some scientists. So it's easy to check about the sensory perceptions, but then if you wish to check about mental consciousness, then perhaps it will be good to use the dream state mind, because at that stage the sensory perceptions are no more working, and therefore the brain parts which are related to sensory perceptions may be not working at the time. And therefore, during dream state, only the mind's mental state is there. So if you can check what changes are happening when someone is dreaming in the brain, what changes are happening. And when somebody is actually experiencing smell or smelling and tasting some food and so forth in dream, what changes are going on in the brain should be checked. So far the scientists don't make distinction between the conceptual mind and non-conceptual mind. So I say to them that it's very important to make this distinction, to know the distinction. So I had this discussion with some Austrian scientists. I know them from a long time. So I know one German professor, scientist I know, very formula. Is really a huge man with a huge nose. So we are very good friends. very close friends. So he was also there in the meeting. So he said one time when we had a meeting in the Dharamsala here, he drew a map of the brain. And he told me that the Christians, and of course it's not just the Christians, but also all the Hindus. In the Sanskrit or Hindi, they use the term Atma. In Tibetan, we call it a self, which is separate, distinct from the five aggregates. So in other words, which has the characteristic of being permanent, unchanging, unitary, and autonomous. So except Buddhism, all other religious traditions believe in this Atma, or soul in English. So this scientist, the German scientist, who brought this map of brain, he said, when the brain works, all the different parts of the brain work together. But there is nothing which is like a governor in the center of the brain at all, he said, which controls everything. So he said the idea of the concept of the teaching of selflessness that is taught in Buddhism is really relevant here. So he said all parts of the brain work together. Of course, the brain, there are different parts of the body, like the visual cortex and so forth, and then there are other parts which work for hearing and so forth. But then when the brain works, he said, the whole brain works together. So recently when he was there in Australia, so he made the distinction between what appeals to your mind and how someone can bring up an ascertainment of a thing. So he said we are still not able to make a decisive conclusion here, but we have to develop it further and further, do more research on it. So he said that we cannot explain. We only know a very small part of the workings of brain, and it's very difficult to know the working of the whole brain. So yesterday, because of the question by one student, it reminded me of the Japanese journalist. He said that the scientists have proved that there is no past and future lives. Decisively, they have proved. But then I said, I have not really heard this, that the scientists have decisively proved that there is no past and future lives. But because it is a topic which is hidden from them, which is obscure to them yet, and therefore for someone to whom a certain topic is not within the purview of research, and they cannot actually prove its non-existence. So it's very difficult for the scientists to decide that there is no past and future lives. As I said yesterday, I know very famous, renowned scientists in the world, scientists who are renowned in the world, who are rather unbiased, impartial. They don't, until they find 100% certainty about something through their experiment and research, they don't make any decisions. But then there are some scientists who make decisions rather arbitrarily sometimes, without really having the complete full knowledge. I was once in Russia. I met some Russian scientists, and there were some journalists also. Then I also explained about the sensory perceptions and also sixth mind, or the mental consciousness. So those scientists scientists, the Russian scientists said there's no such thing as sixth mind. So what they were thinking was, they were thinking that when I said sixth mind, it meant soul. So they were brought up under the communist regime. When you put on the eyes of the horse this so the real good scientists always are open to research. They don't make decisions right away. No. So yesterday, His Holiness quoted the Buddha's verse, "O monks and scholars, just as the gold is tested by rubbing, cutting, and burning, you should test my teaching and not accept it out of your devotion to me." So whatever I have said, the Buddha has said that you should accept them after you find it standing to the test of reasoning and your experience and experiments. And if something that I've said is not in accordance with reasoning and experience, then you should reject them. So even masters like Nagarjuna and so forth have done this. Taken this quotation, that saying from the Buddha, literally, and have checked and examined the Buddha's teaching. And if something is not standing up to the test of reasoning, they rejected them, and they actually interpreted them as being interpretable. So I get up in the morning around 3 o'clock, and then until around 7 or 8, I do lots of analysis in my mind. So even though I am a Buddhist, I don't accept the Mount Meru. So it is said in the text that the shadow of Mount Meru is something that we experience, but then while we are said to be experiencing this shadow of it, where the shadow comes from, the object itself is not seen, and that's very difficult to accept. So otherwise, you would be just torturing yourself by accepting something which doesn't test to the test of reasoning. So in Tibetan, there is a saying that do not argue with geshe-las, and do not bang your hand against a pillar. So the question that somebody put yesterday about what I had said in the opening the eye of wisdom, I'm not accepting that now as being a reason to prove past life as such. Of course, there are imprints from the past life because of which people have all kinds of experiences in this life. So what I've said in the opening the eye of wisdom, actually the source is Bhaviveka's the essence of Madhyamaka. So one scientist I knew, he is now dead. So he has said that at that time there were about 6 billion people on this earth, and he said that just as there are 6 billion human beings on earth, there will be 6 billion viewpoints on one object from 6 billion people. So because when you go into the subtle levels or workings of the neurons and so forth, they are very different from individual to individual. So many of these things that scientists explain, which are considered to be mysterious, So perhaps they may be because of our past imprints from the past lives. But when I talk with the scientists, I'm not mentioning to them about the past imprints from the past life as such. So whatever we can discuss at the level of the scientists, the field of their research, I tell them. So when I have discussions with scientists, I say that we are not discussing between Buddhism and science, but we are discussing something which is science taught in Buddhism and modern science. So regarding the past and future lives and so forth, these doesn't come under the purview of the scientific research yet. I tell them. So perhaps we are now at a very beginning stage of doing some research on the mind scientifically, and perhaps it will develop further in this century. And as they find more and more information through their experiments and research, they may be able to find more and more information again. So in Buddhism, there are 4 different reasonings or principles, such as the principle of reality or nature, and principle of functioning, and principle of logical reasoning. So the scientists are actually using the 3rd one, the principle of logical reasoning. So we have to base our explanations on the teaching of the Buddha, and the explication of the teaching of the Buddha should be based on the writings of Nalanda masters. Of course, it's if you can't actually study them, it's your problem. But if you can, it really helps to open up your mind, your vision. So when I give people presents of Buddha's picture of a Buddha or the picture of the 17 Nalanda masters, I explain to them from the Buddhist point of view. Of course, these great beings are objects of reverence. But from generally speaking, I tell them that Buddha was a great philosopher and great thinker of India. And he bases his teachings on reasoning. Mainly, he emphasizes on reasoning, and therefore he was an ancient Indian scientist as well. I tell them, we can call him. And Nagarjuna was a great professor of Nalanda University. He was a great educated thinker. So he never based himself on blind faith, but always tested the teachings of the Buddha. And so, as I said, I talked about having moral principle, and the root of that, the source of that is warm-heartedness. And if you act morally, then you will be at advantage. You will have profit. And if you do act immorally, you'll suffer. So whoever we are, if we live a very moral and a principled life, then you'll be able to live a very happy life, a good life. Otherwise, not. If you live an immoral life, there's no way you can actually live a very good life. So even if you think about one life, it's important to live it morally. So for this, mainly what you need is education, knowledge. So you have to build up moral principles through reasoning, not just blind faith. And therefore, in the texts on logic and epistemology, there's some mention of afflicted compassion, which is even there in the animals. So the animal compassion in the animals come from the view of clinging to a self and thinking about oneself. But usually when I explain about compassion, there's a level of compassion which extends to one's family members, relatives. So this is something which is oriented towards the other's behavior. So when you have someone who actually find them to be helpful to you, doing good, something nice to you, then you have love and compassion to them. So this is also biased and doesn't extend. It's biased and doesn't extend to others who are you consider to be your adversaries. So this is other oriented, based on the action of the others. So this is there even in the animals. So this is afflicted compassion and love. And similarly, you can have afflicted faith and afflicted loving kindness or affection. So these are biased and partial. So these are rooted in our self-grasping attitude. Now the unbiased kind of love and compassion is not based on biological factors. So there is a seed in us. Biologically, we have a seed for compassion and love. But then this has to be nurtured with the help of our wisdom and discernment. We have to develop it into that universal kind of impartial love and compassion. So this comes through training your mind, and you will be able to develop by using your reasoning this kind of impartial love and compassion. So this doesn't depend on how others react to you or what others do to you as such. So although somebody may be doing something maybe doing something to try to harm you or something, but then because everyone, like yourself, doesn't want suffering but wants happiness, and therefore you can extend this kind of impartial love to them as well who try to harm you. So this kind of love and compassion is very advantageous in the long run as well. And so this can be done not by animals but humans alone. So of course we can talk about deities, non-gods and spirits and so forth, but those are different cases. So the partial love and compassion is oriented towards the other's behavior to you, whereas the universal one is not so. So whether you are religious or not doesn't matter. You can develop this kind of impartial universal love and compassion. So we talk about world peace. How do we actually bring it about? So how can you actually develop universal world peace just by having some function and releasing some doves? Like they do in North Korea. So we did this one time also. It seems like we are actually torturing the doves when you do this. So when you release these doves amongst a big crowd, I mean, they are actually so anxious that they can't fly. And so one time this was done in a function, and one of the doves actually landed on my shoulder. So we want world happiness, but then we are disturbing the peace of the mind of these doves. So that's very silly to do. So we have to bring about peace within our mind. So I have a story to tell. During the Soviet Union times, and I met some journalists in Moscow. So they were actually putting this word in my mouth. peace-loving country. Before 1979 it was. I had visited other Western countries, and I knew by then of many things. And none of the Western countries were not preparing to actually launch a war against the Soviet Union. But the Soviet Union was actually preparing to have a war against the other countries. So the journalists tried to put this word in my mouth, peace-loving country. He wanted me to say that the Soviet Union was a peace-loving country. He tried so many times to put this word in my mouth, but I never uttered that. And so he became angry. So if he became angry, it's his problem. And I was going to come back to India. So if we talk about, it will not help just by talking about peace in the world, even if we may say it hundreds of times. So what we have to do is develop love and compassion. If you have this, then nobody will dislike it. So if you have love and compassion, you will not react brutally when someone says something against your opinion. So in China, they talk about really punishing very gravely when somebody does something that they consider to be negative. So they use very brutal languages, harsh languages. And so they are, of course, they are objects of our compassion, if you really think carefully. And they also tell lies a lot. They want to present themselves to be really nice in front of others, but then they tell lots of lies. So they have to actually hide. So it's like the cats doing a poo-poo somewhere and then covering it with earth. They have to hide their lies and so forth. So we have to build world peace by building up love and compassion. Maybe this is not related to what I want to say now, but it doesn't matter. Now, in 1935, I was born, and at that time in China, China was already China had suffered the Japanese invasion, and then around 1938 or so forth, 1939. Then there was the World War, Second World War, and then around 45, in 1945, the two atom bombs were used on Japan. So one atom bomb killed hundreds of thousands of people. So once I visited a museum of the atomic bomb in Hiroshima or somewhere. So there was a clock, a wristwatch. So it had stopped at 10 o'clock. So the clock, the watch got burned completely and stopped working. At that time, it was 10 o'clock, then when the bomb was thrown. And then there were many needles which had already melted and bundled together. So it's really amazing. And I also met some victims, survivors of the Second World War atom bomb. So it was really sad. And then later on, after the Second World War, there was the Korean War, then Vietnamese War happened. And then in the beginning of, since the beginning of this 21st century, there was the Iraq War, and then in Afghanistan. And then you have this talk about terrorism. So it's almost the whole of my life I saw all these terrible things happening in the world, violence. So the 20th century was a century of great prosperity in science and development in science and technology and education. But then these advancements have been directed or diverted towards destruction, building of destructive weapons. So September 11 incident in New York, 2 aeroplanes were used to as weapons, so to destroy 2 buildings. So while there has been technology and science advancement in them, but our human intelligence also have really developed so much. I mean, people used passenger aeroplanes, commercial aeroplanes, which are full of with fuel. So they actually calculated very well all these things, that these planes, if they're used at such and such time, it's full of fuel, and they were not, the people who used them were not foolish, but they were really intelligent people. But then what they did was, without having any kind of compassion towards anybody, they were angry at America and the American doings in Iran, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and so forth. And so, but then what they actually did was destroy 2 buildings, and many people also died. They couldn't think about those harming so many people. So I usually say that the 20th century is a century of great advancements in science and technology, but then it has become a century of bloodshed, warfare. And some historians say that in the 20th century, there are 200 million people were killed through war and battles. So having done that, if there had been, if we had been able to bring about a peaceful world by doing all these violent things, then of course it's maybe justified, but this is not the case. So in the 20th century, people have resorted to using weapons when there was some trouble. Immediately using weapons. So I usually say that this century, the 21st century, has to be, we have to make it this century a peaceful century, non-violent century. Of course, there will be problems, but then we should not use force to overcome the problems. And thinking of winning, having victory for yourself, but defeating others. So we should also have dialogue to resolve the problems. So this 21st century should be a century of dialogue. I usually tell this. Many people like this idea. So this is something, if we put effort, this is something we can actually achieve. So to achieve this goal, we need it is rooted in thinking of benefiting others. So this is the essence. What I've been saying so far is about the essence of drops for nurturing beings, to build morality, honesty, and for that you have to use our intelligence, our discernment, and wisdom. So now we have come to the point of introducing the teaching of the Buddha, based on this in praise to the Buddha for teaching Tibetan origination. So there are four vehicles which are mentioned in the sutras. The vehicle of the humans and gods, the vehicle of Brahma, the vehicle of Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, and the vehicle of Bodhisattvas. So most of the religious traditions in the world come under the first category. How people can live a good life in this world, and how people can reach heaven and so forth. So these have to do with the vehicle of humans and gods. And then the Brahma vehicle is about the tradition of the Hindu, where they have the teachings on the practice of shamatha and vipassana. And then the Shravaka and Pratyeka Buddhayanas have to do with those who wish to reach enlightenment or nirvana for their own sake. And then the fourth vehicle, the Bodhisattva vehicle, or the Bodhisattva Yana, is to do with basing oneself on the altruistic intention to help all other sentient beings and doing the practice of the six perfections. So within this, there are the Sutra and Tantra traditions or systems. So this is like a summary, the summation of the whole of the religious traditions from which the Buddha has done. So with regards to the teaching of the Buddha, which teaches selflessness, the Buddha first gave teaching on the Four Noble Truths, which shows that suffering comes from causes. So in order to overcome it, you have to resort to the means by which it is overcome. The Buddha said, the great sages, the mighty sages, do not wash away the sins of sentient beings, and they do not take away the the suffering of sentient beings. So the suffering which have come, which are caused by the karma and afflictive emotions. And the Buddhas do not transpose their own realizations into others. So this is not the way Buddhas can help sentient beings to reach liberation. So there's no way Buddhas can gift it to them, the sentient beings. Buddhas cannot give the nirvana or liberation or cessation, true cessation, and the path that leads to true cessation that are within themselves into others' mind. But how do Buddhas help sentient beings is by showing the path, which in the beginning he himself learned by reading texts and also by listening to others' teachings. And this is not so stable knowledge. Your knowledge that you gain by reading some book or by listening to others' teaching is not so stable. But then what you have to use is your reflection. So as I mentioned earlier, the four principles of the reasoning of nature and the logical arguments and so forth. So you have to use reasoning. The inferential cognitions that you develop through reasoning finally has to reach intuitive knowledge. So what scientists do is they try check what is obvious to the sensory perceptions, and then they try to infer things which are beyond the senses. In Buddhism, we use our experience. So this shows that we are actually using our own experience, the intuition. So by using our reasoning, logic, and when you gain some certitude about some points, that is what we call inferential cognition. So in school, you study different texts, the different subjects, and then the teachers, of course, teach you, and you read your book, And then that knowledge that you have gained is just knowledge gained through hearing or studying. But then you read more books and you try to gain certitude about the different points of the subjects. And that is when you gain some certitude about them, when you find, oh, this is this should be this, and through reasoning, then you use your reflection or contemplation. So merely remaining at the first level of hearing will not be so stable, because when somebody else says something else, you'll be diverted towards that kind of belief, and you'll not be able to stand your own ground. Whereas if you use reflection, reasoning, and then gain certitude, then you will not be swayed by others' reasonings, because you are sure that this is this way. And then, having developed this kind of wisdom, or developed through reflection, then you have the inferential cognition. So, for example, if I think about emptiness, first I hear teaching on emptiness, and then I think about it, reflect on it, the teachings. So I'm not being audacious here, but I began to take interest in emptiness around the time when I was about 16 or something. Amongst my assistants in debate, there was Ngutu Sonyi, who was a Mongolian scholar, really good scholar. So between him and me, we had some agreement. After the Lhasa, so we made an agreement to study in detail Tsongkhapa's essence of fine sayings, the text on interpretable and the provisional meanings of the teaching of the Buddha. So but after my examination, Geshe examination, the situation in Tibet completely changed, of course. And then I told this monk to go to Sera. And then there was Minya Lobsang also, who also was in the same Geshe examination as me. So if he had been able to escape into India, he would have been great. So his name was Lobsang from the Minya Kansen. Loseling from Loseling, Drepung Loseling. Is there anyone from Loseling Minya Kansen? So Setapa was the Dhamma protector of this Kansen at the Drepung Loseling. And so Dalai Rinpoche Dalai Rinpoche did some test in front of Dalai, set up this Dhamma protector, whether he should escape to flee to India or flee Tibet or not. And in front of this set up protector, the oracle, and the divination came that he should not flee to India. But then Dalai Rinpoche actually decided otherwise. So it had been better that he escaped into exile. So this great master, scholar, I really feel sorry for having lost all these great scholars from Minya Kansen of Loseling. So since the age of 16, I really took some interest in emptiness. And then at the age of 24, I reached India in exile. And then around the late 20s and 30s, I really reflected on emptiness. So perhaps I can presume that I can kind of say that I may have realized the gross level of um, the personal selflessness. But then with regard to the subtle one, I think that I may be tending towards the insight into the subtle selflessness of persons. Unless I do not do some analysis, but if I do analysis, when I think, whenever there's this word, I made a Lama sit on my, or on the lotus at my heart and so forth, I tend to think about this I can kind of come to some kind of understanding of selflessness of this I. So yesterday there was a question about self. So you have to develop this experience through by contemplating on these kind of things over and over again. So around my 40s, I could kind of gain some kind of understanding or insight into the selflessness, and I could see that through this understanding and insight into emptiness, one would be able to reach nirvana. And so I thought that around that time, that if I reach nirvana, then I would really take a long rest. But then, in 1967, I received teachings on the Bodhisattva Charya Avatara by Shantideva from Kunulama Rinpoche Tenzin Gyaltsen. And this, after this teaching, then I could really make feel some change in my mind about bodhicitta. And then I could actually feel the courage to develop it. And this prayer, which says, as long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, may I too remain to dispel the suffering of beings. I mean, when I say this prayer, it really gives me inspiration, great inspiration. And also, I really like this prayer in Bodhisattva Charya Avatara, which intelligent one would feel despondent thinking about bodhicitta. I recently received some message about a Lama who had said that he was going to thinking of taking rebirth in Sukhavati or some paradise. And I thought, what use is that? The reincarnation of the Lama is supposed to be helping other sentient beings who are suffering. So why think about being born in some pure land? And in the life story of the first Dalai Lama, the Ginten Drup, there is this mention that some students told him that you have prophecies that you will be born in some pure land, Sukhavati, and you may have lots of signs and indications for that. And then Ginten Drupa's response for that was, I don't expect to be. I'm not thinking of being born in Sukhavati or some pure land. My intention is to be able to help other suffering sentient beings as much as I can. I'm not thinking about, so I'm not boasting about this. So what I'm trying to say here to you is that I have found that there are many different experiences can actually happen to oneself in my own life. For example, about the experience of emptiness, and also about bodhicitta, this altruistic intention to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. If you have to think about what you are studying and you have to actually reflect on them, think them over and over again. So what happens is we have this, because of our selfish motive, thinking only about one's own welfare and well-being, we have all kinds of problems, and therefore you have to see the disadvantage of this selfish motive. So may my body and all the resources that I've gained in the time, may I dedicate them for the benefit of all sentient beings. So this is in the prayer, which is called the sixth session Guru Yoga. And when I'm unable to recite these lines, don't think that I don't do the sixth session Guru Yoga every day. I do it. So maybe some of my friends here would think that His Holiness maybe not doing the sixth session Guru Yoga every day. So your body, speech, and mind are dedicated for the well-being of others. So this helps to build your courage, determination to help others. And so with this, it helps to be transparent, to be truthful. So if you really could give thought to what you study, you can build experience, of course. Meditation, regarding meditation, I do not have, so I can actually make excuse that I have no time to meditate. Otherwise, I would be in trouble. I have a friend, American, so for the last 30 or 40 years, he has been meditating. And some years ago, he does deity yoga practice, and he said that he's able to stay on one focus single-pointedly for 3 hours or so, without distraction. So when he actually focuses his mind on one point in the body, he could also experience the dissolution processes of the earth, water, fire, and wind energies, dissolving one into the other. So he has this kind of experience, as it is mentioned in the Guhyasamaja Tantra. And Je Rinpoche's Rimwa Denzog and Rimwa Saturn and all these commentaries on the 5 stages of the Guhyasamaja completion stage make these experiences rather fresh if you read them. So I have an American friend who helps people to meditate, single-pointed. And he meditates on the 37 factors leading to enlightenment. Some of them have experience of being able to stay on one focus without distraction for 4 hours. So I have told some scientists that they should actually check these people with the permission of the practitioners themselves, of course. So if you meditate, it is possible to build a single-pointed concentration. So as this American guy has said, I mean, you can actually have the experiences which are given in the text. And then with regard to bodhicitta, you can see how this holding others more dear than oneself, you'll be able to win the battle against selfish motive, self-cherishing attitude. I'm telling you this is from my experience, not that these things have happened in the past. And then all of us have the Buddha potential to become a Buddha. Buddha nature. And we also have this self-cherishing attitude. So we have to develop this cherishing others further and further. And we also have to develop this critical mind which checks about the reality of things further and further. We should not leave. We should not think that there's things that are taught in the text are just not real experiences, but words. So some Tibetan who had come from Tibet recently, when he saw some monks debating, he said that, "Oh, you're always talking about some things that are not really there. You're talking about things that are non-existent." And then a story goes that one Lama was giving a teaching, and one of the people in the audience asked, "Where is the Buddha, whom you consider to be very sacred?" And then the Lama, who was on the throne giving teaching, "Where is the Buddha?" When this question was asked, I mean, he had no answer because he was not really well educated. If he were educated, he would be able to give answer to this, like it is taught in the Prajnaparamita Sutras, where it says that the mind is not within the mind itself, but the nature of mind is clear light. And so when the audience asked the question, perhaps the Lama didn't know. Perhaps he knew, but he didn't actually answer, give the answer, the correct answer. But perhaps, most probably, he didn't know. So the answer he gave us, up there in the azure heaven, in a crystal palace, the Buddha resides there. So many of us actually pray, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, but we don't really know the meaning. One time I went to Jispa. We had to pass this Rotangla, this high mountain pass, and then we took a rest in a village. I think it's Sisur or something. And then I met the villagers there. I told them, "We are all Buddhists, aren't we?" They said, "Yes." I said, "What is Buddhism?" They said, "Taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha." I said, "Yes, that's right. But then what is the Buddha?" They said they didn't know. In that case, is the Buddha and Brahma, Shiva, are they all same? They said, "Yes." This shows lack of knowledge, their ignorance. But they have faith. Although they have faith, they don't actually study about what the Buddha is, who the Buddha is, what the Dharma is, and so forth. Although there are monks, even though there may be monks in some villages, those monks actually do this all kinds of rituals and not try to explain to other people. So people go to some teachers, some lamas or monks. We have these texts for more divination, throwing dice or something, and the texts themselves don't mention about, according to the number of the dice, the holes in the dice, there is no mention of meditating on love, compassion, emptiness, and so forth, but the lamas talk about doing all kinds of prayers to overcome this and that spirit and so forth. So what I was saying earlier was the Four Noble Truths. So there's a two set of causality. One is the causality in terms of how we are led into samsara, and we have suffering, and the other causality is how we are led out of samsara through the path of the true path. And then, with regard to the working of these, the causality of how we are led into samsara and how we are led out of samsara, a more detailed explanation is given through the teaching of the 12 links of dependent origination, where you have the first link as ignorance, which gives rise to the second link, the condition, the formative karma, and then the consciousness and so forth. And then in order to overcome this chain, break the chain of suffering, you have to meditate on selfless and so forth. Thereby, you actually reverse the whole order, and you overcome ignorance, which will cut the next chain and the rest. So this teaching on for the dependent origination is also found in the Pali tradition. But then when you go deeper into this causality, the dependence in terms of causality, you come to the more subtle one. So using this as the reasoning, the causality, dependence of causality, then you come to the conclusion that things are only dependent, relative to each other, and therefore nothing can be posited without relation to others. So the dependence by designation is the final point where everything comes down to. And Buddha has said, what comes through conditions, whatever comes through conditions, there is no birth in it. Nature of birth is not there in it. And whoever understands this conditionality is heedful. And Master Nagarjuna also says, what is dependent is said to be empty, and that itself is said to be designated. And this is the path, the middle path. And Aryadeva says the same thing. And then Chandarakshita has written the Tatu Samgraha, and to this Kamalashila has written a commentary. But he says, by understanding the dependent origination, one actually engages in the practices which lead to a higher rebirth. And then understanding the dependence in terms of designation, one develops the understanding of how things are only dependent, and therefore one can overcome the ignorance about the reality of things and lead oneself to liberation. So by thinking about and reflecting on and practicing, doing practices based on understanding of law of causality, you create the causes for higher rebirth. Whereas by thinking about and studying and thinking, reflecting on and meditating on the dependence in terms of how things are only related, merely designated, then it helps to go out of samsara, reaching nirvana, and with the help of bodhicitta, that understanding itself can lead you to omniscient state of Buddhahood. So if you are asked what Buddhism is about, you can answer by saying that Buddhism teaches, as its philosophical view, there is dependent origination, and then as its ethical practice, it teaches the practice of non-violence. So this non-violence, practice of non-violence is based on the understanding of dependent nature of things. So it's not just that because if you harm others, then it will hurt the Buddha. Not like that, but because by harming others, you will have the negative consequences from that, and therefore, because you don't want suffering, and therefore you should harm others, and you should avoid harming others. So, if you wish to help others, whatever problems and challenges you may face, you should have this courage, which is helped by bodhicitta. So this should maybe can be held by the understanding of emptiness. This is very clear in Nagarjuna's Bodhicitta Vivarana, commentary on the bodhicitta. So he says that once you understand how things really exist, that they do not have any intrinsic nature, that everything is empty of intrinsic nature, then there will naturally, there will be an upsurge of compassion towards the sentient beings. So this is, of course, in relation to disciples who are of sharp faculty. So what you have to understand is that the ignorance should be overcome by developing the understanding of emptiness. And then, therefore, you have to understand emptiness and then find that the nirvana and omniscient state of Buddhahood and so forth are possible, because you have the antidote against the root of all these problems, the samsara and the cognitive obscuration, which is ignorance about the reality of things. And this can be overcome through the understanding of emptiness. So ignorance also gives rise to attachment and aversion. So how do you overcome ignorance? So Aryadeva says that one should put all one's effort in understanding emptiness, gaining insight into emptiness, because if you understand the dependent nature of things, how things arise in dependence on other factors, then you will be the ignorance will not arise. In the 60s, one Lama, Bamje Rinpoche, went to France. And at that time, when he was going to, before he went to France, I had met him, and he told me later that in the 60s, he told me that I had told him that to teach the Lam Rim from the end, from the insight part, beginning with the insight part. So it seems I was quite intelligent even at those times. So Solon is quoting from Shandarakshita's Tattva Samgraha, where he talks about how the followers within amongst the Buddha's teachings, there are two different kinds of followers, one with sharp intelligence, one with dull intelligence. Those with sharp intelligence first find out the reality of the teaching, the truth about the teaching of the Buddha through reasoning, and try to understand emptiness, and then develop bodhicitta based on the understanding of emptiness, and then go forward in their path, whereas those with dull faculty do otherwise. They first develop bodhicitta and then try to develop the understanding of emptiness and then progress on the path. So, with regard to Je Rinpoche Tsongkhapa, of course, he received his Upasaka vows or precepts from Karmapa Rebbe Dorje, the fourth Karmapa, in Amdo, and he took refuge in the Buddha. Of course, he had been saying, Je Rinpoche has said in this text, that until he really understood the deeper meaning of independent origination, emptiness, he had not seen the qualities of the Buddha. So his faith, reason-based faith in the Buddha, must have come through his understanding of emptiness. So he didn't actually write this text, the praise to the Buddha for teaching about dependent origination, like composing some text purposely, but it just was an extemporaneous kind of composition after gaining insight into emptiness on that morning. So in the Nyingma tradition, we have the Nyingma master Longchen Rabjamba. His writings are marvelous, but then when it comes to teaching on the suchness or the reality of how things arise through dependence, it's not so elaborate and not so clear. And similarly, with regard to Sakya Pandita and other Sakya masters, there have been so many of them, so it's very difficult to find texts which written by them where you find very clear presentation of how things are dependently originated. But Tsongkhapa's texts are very, very unique in terms of this kind of explanation on the dependent origination of things. And Mipam Rinpoche has made a praise of Je Rinpoche, Tsongkhapa, and he has written a praise of Tsongkhapa based on his teaching on the teaching on dependent origination. So this shows how, of course, Mipam Rinpoche himself has some criticism of the Tsongkhapa, but then he also found great qualities in Tsongkhapa in terms of his teaching on dependent origination, and from the point of view of teaching this, he praised Tsongkhapa. So I have received the oral teaching on this text by Tsongkhapa. I received the oral teaching from Gen Rinzin Tenpa, one of the Kinori masters from Kinor. So he had heard it from Kangsar Dorji Chang. I'm not very clear, but perhaps he this. Homage to Manju Shri. So in His Holiness text, there are the two verses, which are the verses of salutation from Mula Madhyamaka Karika of Nagarjuna. So, which is the verses for homage to the Buddha for teaching the that of dependent origination free from the 8 extremes. So he was praising the Buddha, paying homage to the Buddha. And then he who here shows in Tibetan, it's a generic term. So the meaning could be explained by context. So here, what it says is that someone who has seen the meaning or that of dependent origination and taught it accordingly according to his own experience, from his own experience, without relying on others, autonomously. So someone who has taught this, it shows that. I bow to him, O conqueror, you who saw dependent origination and taught it. So I find the wording Tenjung with Tekwananyi means is better because the reality of dependent origination, or the suchness of dependent origination, because it's the connotation is that that of the understanding of emptiness from the point of view of the Prasangika Madhyamaka. Rinpoche says that if you don't have the understanding of the real nature of things, even if you may train yourself in bodhicitta and renunciation, you will not be able to overcome, to cut the root of samsara. And therefore, he says, he advises us to develop this insight into the dependent origination of things, dependent arising. So the understanding of emptiness and dependent origination complement each other, but this complementarity doesn't mean that one is the meaning and the one is the object, nor is it like when you understand emptiness, that the dependent origination is implicitly kind of understood. It's not like that. But when you understand that things are dependently originated, then that destroys the objectification of things, and thereby you come to the conclusion that things are empty. So it's a very, very difficult thing. If I could push myself, it's very difficult to gain insight into what Rinpoche has said about without alternating between the dependent origination and the causality of things and emptiness. When one comes to when one sees the dependent origination, if one is able to gain the insight into emptiness, then one has actually completed the analysis into emptiness or dependent origination. So with regard to emptiness, Nagarjuna didn't write his book as a PhD kind of thesis when he wrote about emptiness. And Buddha also didn't teach form is empty, emptiness is form, form is not other than emptiness, emptiness is not other than form, without any meaning. Why he taught this is because of the root of suffering, our delusions, which is the total confusion about the reality of things, or ignorance, the fundamental ignorance, which give rise to other afflictions, disturbing conceptions and emotions, and which give rise to creation of karma, and through which we suffer. So, in Buddhism, when it says that the root of suffering is ignorance, is something great. No other religious tradition says this. So this is true. So we all don't want suffering, we all want happiness. But we have suffering. Why? Because of our ignorance. So with regard to ignorance, there's ignorance about law of causality, which is further rooted in the ignorance about the reality of things. So even if you understand the law of causality and you may be able to overcome ignorance about the law of causality, you are still left with the ignorance about the reality of things as they are. And therefore, if you are able to overcome the later ignorance, which is ignorance about the reality, then you will be able to overcome the ignorance about causality as well. So we are on verse number 3. So the reason why the Buddha is the knower supreme and teacher supreme, or unexcelled teacher and knower, is because of his understanding of emptiness, teaching on emptiness. Of course, in order to reach omniscient state of Buddhahood, you have to have bodhicitta, but this has to be helped by the understanding of emptiness. So what is the meaning of dependent origination is shown by verse number 5. Whatsoever depends on conditions, that is devoid of intrinsic existence. What excellent instruction can there be more amazing than this proclamation? So our suffering and happiness come from causes and conditions. Even animals are aware of this. So this kind of gross level of the working of causality is even known. The animals are aware. So when you are hungry, you know that it has to be overcome by eating food. So you can't meditate on food in order to overcome hunger. And by making some prayer, you cannot get rid of it. Hunger. So in the 50s and 60s, some Chinese jail guards have told some Tibetans that you don't have to eat food, you can just make your prayers to your Buddha and so forth. So this is something that even animals know. It's something that even animals know, that to overcome their hunger, they have to eat some food. So effects are dependent on their causes. We make this distinction between cause and effect. And when we look at them, how do they appear to us? When we think about something as being, like if you have a fruit, you will say, oh, this is a result. So when this fruit appears as a fruit or the result and effect of something, there is this appearance that the fruit is out there as an entity which is not dependent on others. But the fruit is dependent on other conditions. And then you can talk about the fruit as a whole and having its different parts, its peel, the inside, the pit, the seed, and everything together. If you break up this fruit into pieces, then you will not have anything to point to as that, pinpoint as that fruit. You see me, you hear me, you see my body and form. So if you are asked, whose voice is this? You'll say it's His Holiness Dalai Lama's, Bhikshu Tenzin Gyatso's voice and body. But which is that Tenzin Gyatso, the Bhikshu Tenzin Gyatso? Is it the body or the mind or what? And then with regard to his body, all the different parts of the body put together makes somebody's body. So if you take apart the limbs, the head, and then break these parts into smaller parts and so forth, you will not have anything that you can pinpoint as being the body of the person as such. So if we can talk about a valid basis of designation of something, but that validity has to do with a language or a concept that actually validates it. So things, the body is designated on the basis or on dependence upon many different parts of it. So when things come together to make something, an entity, and then you have at that point a basis for designating such and such. So You have only that way of existence of things, conventionality of things. So apart from this conventional way of existing things, there is nothing which exists, solidly from their own side as such, objectively. And so whatever is dependent on causes and conditions, what this shows is that it's dependent, it's contingent upon others. Because it's contingent, therefore we can talk about its dependence on causes and conditions. And therefore, because it's dependent, it lacks independent existence. And therefore, they are merely designated, merely nominal. And so, but then when things appear to us, they don't appear as being merely nominal or designated. We tend to believe there is this appearance of things having some kind of a solid existence from their own side. And then we have the sense of I. And then we think of my body, then further you extend it towards my relatives, family, my friends, and so forth. And so in this way, you create causes for karma. Verse number 6, by grasping at it, the childish strengthening bondage to extreme views. For the wise, this very fact is the doorway to cut free the nets of collaborations. Verse number 8, finished. So there are philosophical systems, schools, which believe that things have true existence, objective existence. So things have some essence in them. Because they say that we can talk about the causes and conditions. Each and everything has their own causes and conditions. And because of this, they say, it's not merely conceptually designated or imputed, but the causes themselves give rise to their effects. And so they say that things don't exist merely because of our thought, our conception. But of course, when Prasankika Madhyamaka says that everything is merely conceptually designated, they don't mean that whatever things can be there, whatever we think of them as such. So our thoughts don't make things as such. So because the lower schools of Tenet understand what the Prasankikas say wrongly, they say that if things are merely imputed, then we could have anything by thinking about anything. So what the reasoning that the other schools use to prove that there is some objective existence and true existence of things, that very reasoning the Prasankikas use to prove that there is no intrinsic existence. So this is what the Buddha has taught, and only the Buddha has said the true meaning of dependent arising. While things are empty of intrinsic nature, they are also dependent on other factors. So because they are dependent, they lack any intrinsic existence, and therefore, when you can say that they are like illusion. So, in verse number 8, it says that the Buddha was a wondrous teacher, and he is the wondrous refuge because he has given teachings. He has introduced us to the causes which lead us to this the fearsome samsara and the antidote to go out of the samsara. So he is the wondrous refuge because he leads us out of both the extreme of samsara and nirvana. The extreme of nirvana here means that you are not left only in the peaceful state of nirvana as those of the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, but he leads you even out of that and leads you to Buddhahood. And Buddha, Nagarjuna and so forth have not just taken the teaching of the Buddha on faith alone, but they say you have to use reasoning. And therefore, the Buddha is a wondrous speaker because of teaching us to analyze things. And the understanding of dependent arising or dependent origination, also through this understanding we can see that it's related to our own experience, the environment, and others. We talk about happiness, well-being, and so forth. But this has to also come in dependence on external factors as well. Therefore, we have to take care of the environment as well. The global economy also, we can explain it in terms of interdependent origination, and health also likewise. So everything is related, connected, and dependent on each other. So of course, this concept of dependent origination comes from Buddhism. But then you can apply it in any kind of field of study, whether it's economy, societal problems, or global climate, and so forth. So many scientists, my friend scientists, really like this idea of dependent origination. This is really great, they say. So one scientist, a very renowned one, I asked him, do you really use this term, dependent origination, in science? So he says it's not there, but it has actually come to be used in science. And it actually, he said that this term, dependent origination, has won a seat in the scientific world. So I have to meet some people there. And then tomorrow we'll have Manjushri blessing of Manjushri, orange Manjushri. So we'll, before leaving, we'll have one question. I'll take one question. In Buddhism, we believe in three objects of refuge. But when we say the prayer of refuge, we say, I take refuge in the Lama also. There's a fourth refuge. What is the reason for that? So Buddha is someone who has overcome both the obscurations or defilements. And then the Sangha is someone who has the experience of emptiness, direct emptiness, direct experience of emptiness. Someone who has the direct experience of emptiness is called a Sangha, jewel. So Buddha and Arya beings, the Sanghas, come through the practice of the Dharma. So for us also, this has to be the case. We have to become a Sangha and a Buddha finally by applying the teaching and practicing it. So you have to practice it before you are on the path of accumulation and then progressing on onwards from there. Um, so, in order for us to practice the Dharma and to study about it and to know the teachings, we have to have somebody to show us this. So for us, the Lama is our source of the teachings. He or she introduces the path, the teaching to us. So within the Lamas, there may be Buddhas or highly realized Sangha beings, Arya beings, or ordinary sentient beings, and so forth. In Thailand, in Theravada traditions, they take Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and there's no mention of taking refuge in the Lama. But in Tibetan Buddhism, we have this because we have Tantra, and in Tantra, there's so much emphasis on the Guru, and we have to receive initiation, tantric initiation, which has to come in an unbroken lineage from the Buddha down to the Lama. And we also take the tantric vows, and this has to be received from a person, someone who is alive. And with regards to bodhisattva vows, you can actually take it from a representation of the Buddha, like statue of a Buddha, doing the ritual in front of it. And then also with regards to the Vinaya, the Pratimoksha vows, individual liberation vows, you have to take the vows from a living person. And so in the Vinaya, there are many different qualifications of a Lama, such as being the Upadaya, your Upadaya, or the master of the precepts, and so forth. Therefore, because of this, the emphasis on the Lama being so important for us in Tantra, we have this line in our prayer, I take refuge in the Lama. So within the Lama, there could be those who are enlightened, fully enlightened Buddhas or ordinary beings. So with regard to the ordinary Lamas, they are not Buddha, they are not, nor are they Sangha. But which category do we put him? Supposing myself, I am really a Lama, but I'm not a Buddha nor a Sangha, a true Sangha. So I am a human being, so I cannot be the Dharma. So generally we can say a Lama may be considered or included within the three objects of refuge. But Lamas like myself, who still aspire to become a Sangha and Buddha and so forth. But then Milarepa says that the blessing of the Lama doesn't depend on your offering. If you have a big offering, you don't get a big blessing. If you have small offering, you don't receive small offerings, the blessing of a Buddha. But all is dependent on your faith. So I think the special mention of taking refuge in the Lama is because of Tantra. We may have another question, a second one. If you study Buddhism, will it harm your economy and politics? Of course, if you don't know Buddhism well, then there could be harm to economy and politics. But then if you know Buddhism well, it will not be of harm to them. For example, if you take some vegetable which is not well cooked, then you may have diarrhea. But if you cook it well, you will not have. So with regard to politics, of course, there are so many people who are corrupt amongst the politicians. So this is because of lack of moral principles within those individuals. So clean politics has to come about by building up moral principles from within. It cannot come from UN charters or religion and so forth. So I went to a conference. So I was invited by people who say they are not involved in politics. They told me, I told them they are wrong. They are Indians. You have to clean up politics in India. And it's your responsibility, I told them. In order to clean up politics, you have to involve yourself in politics and not otherwise. Otherwise, you cannot do that. So in economics also, there are so many people who are really hypocritic and corrupt. People who are greedy and have big mouth, they seem to win the election. And so, of course, not all, but most of them have selfish motives. So this is because of lack of moral principles that are taught in the religions. So religion helps to individuals as well as having clean politics, good economics, and I am a Buddhist monk, but with regard to socio-economic theory, I believe in Marxism. I find it really good.
As far as socio-economic theory is concerned, I am a Marxist. Not Marxist,
So with regard to economics, what Marxism actually fights for the rights and privileges of the people who are downtrodden. And they talk about equal distribution in terms of economics. So there is moral ethics in there. In capitalist theory, on the other hand, you only think about making profit. They don't talk about equal distribution at all. And the rich ones get richer and richer, where during the times of Ronald Reagan, the American president, and Mrs. Thatcher, they actually went on the path of capitalism. And in China, they are authoritarian. They have gone on the capitalist path. So it's important for a peaceful world and a happy world to have inculcate the messages that are found in the different religious traditions. Yesterday I mentioned about white politics, the white, red, and mixed color politics. So black refers to these kind of dirty politics. So these people to use their power in order to abuse others. So this is because of their being unable to tame their mind.